he talks about regret a lot with you guys. So that's how I'm going to start this off. Um, when it comes to regret, he's not like just making that up. When I started this business, I was at my job for 27 years. And I hired a lot of guys sitting in these chairs, former players. Coach Riley would go, group, can you give this guy a job? Yep. Did it like 7 times. And this was a job that had an extremely high turnover. Okay. And these dudes just far exceeded that retention rate. What I mean by retention rate is when we were bringing in new hires, about 40% of them wouldn't last a year. I brought in 7, all 7 of them lasted well beyond a year. All right. And that got some wheels turning on. But why are these dudes doing so well when nobody else can? Okay. And I started looking at the student athlete component to it. And then I realized there was more to it. This is probably like a whole business that I had. So I had the idea to start a staffing agency based solely on hiring former student athletes. Right? And when I told some of the former players who I got jobs what I was doing, and part of it was going to be a career development, like what we're doing here tonight, he told me verbatim, I wish I had this when I was in school. And I say that to say, if I know a lot of you guys are thinking this career development, either I don't need it or this dude doesn't know what he's talking about. If that's what you're thinking right now, that's fine. Think like that. You don't have to listen to me. If you don't want to have that regret and you want to have the experience that someone who sat in your seat wishes they had when they were here, then listen up. All right? Of all the people who are playing high school sports, only 7% of those play at the league. All right. So just by being in this room, you're special. And what that student, the kids that I helped before, what they didn't know and why this is so valuable is your student athlete experience is your internship. And if you can convey that properly to a hiring manager, you can demonstrate that not only is it on par with a traditional internship, it may even supersede. All right. And that's what we're going to discuss today is how the skills that you're acquiring as a student athlete, how they're transferable to the real world. You can go, I did this on the way here. You can ask Siri, what are the most common skill sets employers look for in entry level jobs? And if you look at a job posting, you're going to see it every time management, teamwork, all of these skills. And you possess them in abundance. Right? Let's just start with work ethic right off the bat. Again, like I talked about, you wouldn't be here unless you had an extremely strong work ethic. Right? Because if everybody could do it, the other 3% that aren't able to continue playing will be able to do it. They don't have the work ethic that it takes and the commitment and the dedication that it takes to get to where you're at. And that discipline is what's going to transfer. When I see a resume and it has a student athlete on there, right away I'm interested. And one of the main reasons is because they're just going to show up, right? The best ability is availability. And I know if I'm hiring a student athlete, I'm getting someone that's going to show up. I talk to my former mentors, CEOs, hiring managers, and their biggest complaint about entry-level candidates, entry-level roles, new to the workforce, recent grads, they don't show up. They call out for silly reasons. They don't have any discipline, and they're not reliable. You don't want to be here right now. Most of you probably don't want to be here right now. That's okay, but you're here because you have to be, right? And that's a transferable skill. When you go to the work world and it's a Monday, and it's rainy, you were out all weekend, your boys are down the shore, you're not going to want to go to work, but you're going to go, right? And employers know that that's who they're getting. That's a valuable skill set. Time management. You cannot excel in the role that you're in right now without excellent time management skills. It's impossible. Your day started probably earlier today and most days before most of your peers. And it's 7:00 at night, and you're still doing commitments. It's ending later than the rest of that. And in the middle of that, you probably had lifts and practice and study hall and classes and all these other things that you got to compartmentalize and able to maintain your playing eligibility, right? Which is also something that you have to do at a higher standard than just a regular student here to maintain that your eligibility to play. You have to have a higher GPA, right? In almost no role are you going to come into and not is in no role that you have is someone just going to throw you into a position and tell you to just go work by yourself, right? That's where teamwork comes in. That of all the ones up there, it probably sounds the least like a corporate word, right? Would you guys agree with that on that list? It's probably the most important. And when I talked about it earlier, you guys can test it out when you leave. Ask Siri or go on Google and see what are transferable skills. It's one of the number one ones. All right. And you have to be a good teammate to thrive in this environment. And as somebody who was in a leadership position before, it was apparent who didn't come from the team environment. I was in like a call center, and a phone would ring right on someone's desk, and they wouldn't answer it just because it wasn't their turn to answer. But their coworker over here struggling off the call, getting yelled at, whatever the case may be, but look their turn, so they didn't answer. Right? Like in your environment, there's no such thing as like that's not my job. Like if we're not collectively working together to achieve the goal doesn't get achieved. So as an employer, when I know I'm bringing in somebody with that mentality, with that mindset, I know I'm getting someone that's going to work for the common good of the company and produce results. Okay. On top of that, in an entry level role, there's going to be so much that you don't know. You have to be coachable, right? You have to be open to constructive criticism. You have to take on those types of direction from management and things like that you're all used to getting. We were talking about it before as some of you guys were trickling in. Like a lot of like your peers just don't take well to that kind of constructive criticism. That's another skill set that you're bringing to the table. Communication skills, I always say preparation breeds confidence. And most of the stuff you guys do, you're attacking with first preparing for it before you attack it, right? You don't go into a game without watching film and prep and practice. And right now we're in a preseason, loading up for the season. It's months of little tedious things. And when you're having that same approach to something that you're going to have to communicate effectively on, you're able to communicate that much more effectively because you know the subject matter so much better. So it makes you a better communicator. Additionally, many people they're afraid to have difficult conversations with somebody in a leadership position or superior or something like that, right? You guys should be having those conversations frequently, whether it's with a coach about a role on the team or something along those lines, or a professor about having to miss assignments or be late for an assignment or miss a class because of your strenuous schedule and travel and all those things. That's not an easy conversation, but it's one that you should be having and you're used to having. That's going to make a much easier transition for you as you move into a corporate environment. Motivation and resiliency kind of go together a little bit. All of these really tie in, but motivation and resiliency probably of all of them are the two that are the most closely tied together. I would imagine that most of you probably as early as like middle school start setting goals for yourself, right? Like 6th, 7th grade, I want to play in high school, right? And then it's 8th grade, I want to play varsity as a freshman. Sophomore year, I want to start. Junior year, I want to play in college. I want to get a scholarship. Then you get here, and that kind of starts all over again, right? As a freshman, I want to start 9. As a sophomore, I want to start. Junior and senior, we want to win championships or leading team in rebound, shooting percentage, assists, steals, rebounds, whatever it is. You're constantly setting new goals and creating new challenges for yourself. That doesn't stop and shouldn't stop just because you move into a professional environment. It's just new challenges, new goals, right? And you don't achieve those goals without overcoming some adversity, some resiliency, a benching, a setback, an injury, right? Something like that you persevered through that allowed you to still be where you're at and to achieve those goals. as a hiring manager, one of the things I want is I want somebody who wants to be there long term. Who wants to be there long term? Somebody who's set goals, somebody who's motivated, somebody who's driven, who's going to be able to stay there long term. Those 7 guys that I brought in, they lasted for years, but everybody else couldn't last 1 year. That's the difference. That's why they lasted. They have that resiliency, and that's what hiring managers are looking for. Somebody who wants to be there long term. Somebody who's going to look to achieve upward mobility. So now I told you how great you are. Now let's learn about how we can use that through the process. All right, how do we take this information that we now have, that we know we have these transferable skills? How do we take that and apply them? All right. So one of the first things that you can start to do to lay kind of like the groundwork to get yourselves opportunities is to attend your school's career fairs. All right. I know you just had one a week or two ago. Who went? Is that up or is that resting? All right. So that's not enough. All right. We have to participate in our career fairs, especially for my underclassmen, like the freshmen, sophomores here, who probably right now really think this isn't for them because I'm talking about jobs and shit like that, and you don't need this. You think for 3 or 4 years, this part's really, really for you. When you go to a career fair, you said you went, right? Yeah. It's nuts, right? Probably like 100 people here, right? So if you go into that, you should have a plan. I don't know if you have a plan into it. You should identify like 5 or 10 employers that you want to work for. Pick a reason, do a little bit of research on why you want to work for it. Your buddy works there. They got a good company culture. They pay well. They're well respected within your major. Whatever the reason is, identify a reason for like 5 or 10 companies, and then go. You'll know what table they're at. Don't just walk around 100 tables aimlessly. Go find them, right? Now, those 5 to 10 tables that you're visiting, if you go to them twice a year for the next 4 years, freshmen, sophomores, 3 or 4 years, that's like 40 to 80 little mini interviews. Because when you go, it's like this, right? There's a table here. You're going to be on this side, you're going to be on that side, and they're going to ask you some basic icebreaker type questions, but it's very similar to an interview setting. And the more comfortable you can get in that environment, the better you're going to perform when you're in an actual interview. So that's one benefit to attending your career fairs, is the fact that you're literally getting like free reps, free little mini interviews, almost 100 of them, if you start taking advantage of it early. The other thing is that company that you're identifying is going to come back. The same one that was here in the fall is going to go back in the spring. Try and take note of that if you get there in the spring. Yep. It's going to be the same people, right? And that person, you identify that company as a company that you want to work for. And that person is either a hiring manager or somebody in talent acquisition that you had the ability over the next 3 or 4 years to build a relationship. Did you get any business cards?
Yeah.
You give them the resume?
Yeah.
Did you send them an email afterwards?
No, I did not.
All right, you should. Probably not too late. Hey, this is, that's Brent. Hey, this is Matthew. I met you at Thomas Jefferson's career fair. It was great to meet you, learn a little bit more about your company. I'm looking forward to staying connected. You on LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Connect with them on LinkedIn. We're going to talk more about that later, but that's another thing. Right? So now you have a relationship with somebody who can directly affect your career path. All right. So that's extremely beneficial to attend career fairs. And a lot of people, I don't think, like you went and you didn't know that. So it's something like that you fully didn't take advantage of the career fair. These are the things that you can be doing to really take advantage of. All right. So it's extremely difficult to get interviews. You guys aren't doing that stuff now. Some of you may be if you're looking for internships like that, but it's a really tough job market. So you have to do a lot to separate yourself. One of the number one things you can do like that, you didn't send that email after the first introduction. Most people don't. Right? Same thing when you apply for a job. For every 100 applicants I get, maybe 4 or 5 will send an email. Hey, this is James. I just applied for your account executive position. I've read the job description. It really aligns with my skill sets and my goals. I'd love the opportunity to discuss this position with you further. Take me 30 seconds to write that. It's going to separate me from 95% of the people, 96% of the people that apply for that job. Now I'm reviewing these candidates. I got 100 candidates to go through. Who am I going to look at first? Look at the 4 or 5, right? And on average, a resume gets looked at for 7 to 10 seconds. Right through. They fly right through it. I'm going to look at that one a little bit more closely because you got my attention. You sent me that thing. At a minimum, it's almost going to get you at least a call, right? And it's not 100%, but it's definitely something that you can do to really, really separate yourself from everybody else who applied for that job. So when you're applying for jobs, especially on LinkedIn, like on LinkedIn, maybe half the time it'll tell you who posted the job. Send them that message. If it doesn't, you can do a little bit like of a deeper dive. You look at like who works at that company and maybe try and figure out who's in talent acquisition, who that department is, and you can shoot them and you keep that same email. Now that looks really ambitious because they know it's you had to do some next level digging to find out who they are and get them that message. So then you would really get their attention, right? There are things that you can be doing to separate yourself. Sorry, talk with my hand. So you need to engage them with those little contacts. It really, really is a big separator. The other thing is building out your network. You guys were talking earlier about like trying to get in grad schools. I asked Coach Ryan, who's DK? You mentioned something about DK, right? You guys need to be networking in person as well to start to take advantage of people in your network who can assist you. Now, that's an example where someone can maybe assist you getting into grad school, but you should have relationships with most of your professors. I know there's a lot of adjunct professors here. That means they're still working, right? So they have relationships with these companies that are eventually going to be able to hire you. Sit in the front row of that class. Stay after class every once in a while. Get to know that professor, like especially like within your major. Let them know what you're trying to do after school. These are people that can help you. So that's one right off the bat. That's an easy one. But if you want to like grow your network, outside of here, when you're in your social circle, right, family, friends, those kind of things, I imagine most of your conversations, like with adults, are sports related, right? Like, oh, how's basketball going? See Eagles game yesterday, that kind of stuff. The challenge is to find people that maybe on the surface you don't have as much in common with. Instead of like talking to the aunt or the uncle, talk to the aunt, right? Things like that. Ask them what they do for a living. Get them talking about themselves. People like to talk about themselves. It makes the conversation a little bit more relaxed. You never know, like these family members or, friends, teammates, fathers, parents, all those kind of things, they could be in a position to help you and not know it because you're not letting them know what you want to do, and that's a missed opportunity, right? People want to help you. They just have to know how. So you have to have those conversations, and that's going to be one way that you can do that. So your in-person networking is really, really important to get yourself these opportunities. Because the majority of opportunities, I sent an email last week. So what I do, like when I'm trying to get new clients, I'm saying, hey, I saw you posted this marketing position. I have some people in my pipeline. I think I can help you. I sent that email last week, and the response I got was, no thanks. We fill most of our positions through internal referrals. That was directly a quote from a hiring manager. And that's not unique to that company. Like 94, 95% of positions are filled through internal referrals. So to put yourself in that class, you have to build out your network in person. But you can also build out your network through this. I started talking about LinkedIn, and we're going to get into that in a minute. But before we talk about like your social media network, I want to talk about social media, like presence and what you should be doing on there. As most of you know, like, social media can be an extremely powerful tool that you can use to your advantage. But if you don't use it properly, it can be used to your detriment as well. It can be weaponized against you, right? We saw a lot of that recently. Charlie Clark got murdered, and I'm not getting political, but people got fired because of what they posted, right? It happens all the time. So what I advise student athletes is when you're posting, you gotta watch what you post. Your presence needs to be pristine. It should be an accurate portrayal of what the image that you want companies to reflect on you, right? So no foul language, no excessive partying, no middle fingers, no polarizing political views. You guys all work way too hard to have an opportunity taken away from you because of something silly that you put on social media. So just be mindful of what you're posting. I'm sure when you were getting recruited, somebody had that conversation with you, right? You all knew to do that throughout the recruitment process, right? It's the same thing in the corporate recruitment process. 96% of employers have admitted to looking at candidates' social medias at some point throughout the hiring process. Think about it, 96%, that's almost everybody. So almost every job that you apply for, they're going to take a look and see what you're putting on there. And if they don't like it, they won't hire you. So again, don't give them a reason to not like you based upon like, your social media presence and potentially kind of cost you an opportunity. All right. But now what we're going to talk about how we can use it to help you. So real quick, who here is on LinkedIn? That's a decent number. So you guys get out your phones and scan that, you connect with me on LinkedIn. That's my QR code. In addition to connecting, but before, you're good. If you're not on LinkedIn, if you didn't get out your phone, you should be. All right. It's an extremely powerful networking tool for professionals. If you're not on there, get on there. And then when you get on there, you should be following your school, any alumni associations that's associated with your school, any professors that are in your network and things like that, and start to grow out your LinkedIn profile in that way. It's the same as any other platform. I know all you guys are active on there. One's super active and has a mass following, and you build it organically. It's the same thing, but that's kind of like the little foundation on how you should start. And don't just get on there and follow a couple people. Get on there and be active. That's how the algorithms work. They want people to know that you're active. You don't even have to post if you're not comfortable posting, but likes and comments and things like that. As a recruiter, if I'm looking for somebody to fill a role, I can see your profile and I can send you a message if you fit the profile of the candidate that I'm looking for. But if I go on your profile and you haven't liked, posted, or commented since you opened your account, then I'm not going to send you a message because you're not going to see it. So that's, again, it's a wasted opportunity. So if we're going to be on LinkedIn as a resource, we need to be active on there and give ourselves as much of an opportunity as possible to create opportunity. All right. We were talking about resumes earlier a little bit. Your resume, does everyone have a resume? All right. It should be in a standard format at a minimum. Especially now, like a lot of, especially like bigger companies, if it's not in the right format, your information won't even flow. So I don't like the resumes. You have people like with the columns. They'll have. I hate that style. And one of the main reasons is it's just when I'm flying through resumes, things aren't where they're supposed to be, and I don't want to go looking for it because I got a hunt to look for. So put things in a format that's going to make it easier for me. When I say me, I don't mean me personally, like selfishly. I mean me, like the hiring manager. We're all the same thing. Everybody's looking at it the same way. The other thing is when it's boxy like that, the information doesn't always pull through. I've uploaded resumes to my CRM and the name, email address, and phone number didn't come over because my system didn't recognize it because of where it was placed on the page. So like that paragraph style resume, that's what it should look like. It should be your information up top, all right? And when I say your information up top, some of you guys aren't from around here, and you're going to be applying to jobs either here, and your address says, Baltimore or something like that, or New York, or vice versa. You might have like an apartment here, and have that address, but you're applying to jobs in Baltimore or New York and things like that. And they may see that and say, well, this dude doesn't even live anywhere near here. Why is he applying for this job? And eliminate you without taking the time to figure out why the discrepancy. So take that out of their hands. Don't put your address, not even city and state, on your resume, especially if you're from like out of town and applying for jobs that could be confusing. So it should just be your name, email address, and phone number. And that may sound simple, like email address, phone number have to be on there. I've gotten like really good resumes from like a candidate perspective, like it kind of checked all the boxes of what I was looking for, and it didn't have their phone number and email address when I had no way of contacting. So like that has to be on it. So it's your contact information. The first thing after that should be your education, major, where you went to school, those kind of things. Like I said, it's an entry level job. What are they going to be looking for? They want to know where you went to school, what your major is. Don't make them go looking for it. Don't put it at the bottom of the page when they got to get through all this other stuff to find it. Put it right where it is, because that's the first thing they're going to want to look for. All right, and then your relevant work history, and so on down the line. A little tip on your relevant work history: you want to, when you can, quantify your accomplishments. Put like, let them know what your effect was on that organization. You know, by adding like a percent, or I handled this much money, or you know, whatever it is, you want to put on there some kind of quantification of what it is that you did. The first thing it's going to do is going to tell them your, like I said, your effect on that organization. But the other thing it's going to do is, as they're scrolling through that very quickly, they're going to see a number, a dollar sign, a percent. That's going to stand out amongst just a bunch of letters. So it's going to get them to stop their scroll and look at it a little bit more closely. Okay? The other thing is, on your resume, you can tailor it to each specific job. So it should be like a template, but there may be some jobs that you're applying for that maybe this work history was a little bit more relevant than this work history. So that they can be interchangeable, because you do want to keep it to a page. All right. And if anybody has any questions on how the resume looks or what they can do, by all means, send it to me, and we can go through that. When you're preparing for an interview, after the resume looks good, but now you're getting ready to interview, you have to research the company prior to going into an interview. I can't tell you how many interviews that I conducted where it was apparent that the person did no research, had no idea who we were or what we did, and they were immediately eliminated from contention. Has anyone ever heard of James Grugan? You guys know like the song 877 Cash Now and all that. That's why I worked for 25 years. Now imagine sitting in an interview and asking somebody, tell me a little bit about what you know about the company. And he sings a fucking song from a commercial. Like that's what he does. Like it's obvious that he did no research. So we're 30 seconds, a minute into the interview, and he's already eliminated from contention for that position because he didn't do anything. Now, if he would have told me, oh, you guys buy structured settlement annuities, yeah, now you got my attention. And you give the person the present value of their future payments. Now you really got my attention because you actually read up on it. Now you're a couple minutes into the interview, and I'm probably leaning towards wanting to give you an offer because it was obvious that you were taking the process serious. You did some research. This is somewhere where you want to be. So a little bit of research really does go a long way. And then you need to have questions prepared for the interview. Nothing derails an interview faster at the end of the interview than saying, do you have any questions for me? And the candidate just sits there and says, no, I think we covered everything. Again, it looks like you're unprepared, like you're not taking the process seriously. So you make sure you have a couple questions prepared for the interview. I can't tell you every question that's going to be on an interview, but I can give you like some basic ones and how to answer them. One of the first questions you're almost always going to be asked is, tell me a little bit about yourself, right? Real common icebreaker question. The best way to answer this, a lot of people, when they go to answer that question, they want to like tell them everything, and they end up rambling and really don't tell them anything, and can really mess up the interview very early on because it loses the interviewer's attention. Right? So a good way to keep them engaged is say, well, what do you want to know about? Do you want to know about my professional goals? Do you want to know about my academic career? or do you want to know about my athletic career, right? Now you give them kind of like three different choices of what they want to know about you, what they want you to answer, and now when they tell us a little bit about your professional goals. Now you have like a clearly defined path on where to take that conversation. So not only are you going to answer that question better, but you're also going to keep them engaged in the conversation. Right? So now the interview is taking on more of a conversation than an interrogation, and it's making you a stronger candidate. It's making you more likable because you're making the interviewer comfortable. So that's a great way to answer that first question right off the bat. Another one is that they're going to ask you about your strengths and weaknesses. They're not really interested in what your strengths and weaknesses are. What they're more so interested on is how you articulate it, right? So especially your strengths, like they really know your strengths. They have your resume. It's probably had a phone screen already, so they kind of know what you're good at, why they brought you in. They just want to know how you articulate it. And for the weaknesses, it's not like a trap question or an I got you. What they're really looking for is some self awareness. Are you cognizant of what your weakness is and what you've done maybe to correct it, right? So like for me, I would answer that, say, like, prior to starting my business, I didn't have the best time management skills. So now what I do to correct that is my day tomorrow will start tonight. Before I end my day, I'll look at my calendar just to give myself a little bit of an idea of what tomorrow looks like. And then the first thing in the morning, I'll look at the calendar and pen and paper, write it down, everything that I have to do that day. And for the windows where I don't have anything, I'll assign myself something. Now my whole day's allocated for. Right, so that's a pretty good answer on how you took a weakness and turned it potentially into a strength. That's kind of more so what they're looking for. All right. The other thing is, if you're going to put something on your resume, it has to be true. You have to have done it. Like you can use like ChatGPT and things like that to strengthen your bullet points. Right. Somebody's always said things better than you, so you can say, "What are good bullet points for this job?" And it'll spit some stuff back out to you that's going to sound really good. You can use that, tweak it a little bit so you're not just straight plagiarizing, but make sure you actually have done it. Right? Don't put on your resume that I'm proficient in Excel and you're not, because then you apply for a job and they give you an Excel proficiency test and you can't do it. Now you embarrass yourself through the interview process. So if you put it on there, make sure that you actually have done it. All right. This is one of my favorite parts of the interview process. This is, I said like at the very beginning, that you guys are special, right? But by living your student athlete experience, you're special and you can easily separate yourself. But you need to learn how to articulate that. And in many interviews, one of the last questions that you're asked is, why should we hire you, or what separates you from other candidates? Something along those lines, right? And this is the question for you to really, really knock that interview out of the park, right? My whole life I've separated myself. And these last 4 years as a student athlete have been the most intense internship you can possibly have. I've increased my already strong work ethic. I've mastered my time management. I've become a better teammate. I've learned what it takes to overcome adversity and to fail. I've learned what it takes to win. But most importantly, these aren't skills that I learned in a classroom or just wrote on a resume. These were learned in real life practical situations that have been tested and are ready to bring to your organization to make an immediate impact. All right. Now that's a pretty compelling answer on why they should pick you over somebody else. And it's near the end of the interview, so it's going to be one of the last things that they hear, and it's going to leave a strong impression. All right. Almost done. We're almost done. Just like the interview process here is almost done. We talked about communication being key, right? And at the career fair, you go back and you send that email. You have to do that after every interview you go on. As soon as you get back to your dorm or housing, wherever we're at, send that email. Hey, thanks for your time. I really enjoyed learning about your company. I hope to hear from you soon. Something like that. Very brief, doesn't need to be much, but make sure you send that email. Some hiring managers, if they don't get that, won't consider you to move you along in the process after a first interview. So you have to do that. If they give you a time frame, you should hear in 5 to 7 days, something along those lines. You get to that window and you haven't heard, just send a follow-up. Hey, just checking in. I'm still really interested in this position. Have you heard anything from the hiring team? Something like that. Just let them know you're there. Let them know that you're interested. Show a little bit of ambition. All right. This last one really sucks. But the reality is, we're not going to get an offer from every job interview that we go, right? You're going to get that email, hey, sorry, thanks for your time, sorry, you went in another direction, basically is what it's going to say, right? If you get an email like that and you still send a thank you email, I understand, still enjoy the process, learning more about your company. Thank you for your time. Perhaps our paths will cross again at a time in the future that's a little bit more mutually beneficial. That shows a very high level of character and professionalism for somebody your age, and they're going to remember that. Right? Especially, it could be a company that's in high growth mode that hires somebody again in 6 months. Or like we talked about, a lot of entry level roles, the hire that they go with doesn't work out, right? And they're going to need to be in that boat again in 3 months, 6 months down the line. They're going to remember that email. Or they may have a colleague who's hiring for a similar position that will tell them, I've seen this happen. Oh, I saw you just hired for, you just had a job for an accounting role. Do you have any candidates that you didn't move forward with? We're looking for a similar role. Yeah, Brendan sent me we didn't use him, but sent me a nice email. I think he'd be a good fit for you. That small little email can open opportunities for you in rooms that you don't even know your name is being spoken. All right. The recurring theme here, guys, is that I told you that you're special, and you are. It's being a student athlete. It's not easy. It's not for everybody, but it's a desirable candidate. A lot of people are in your position, and they have the opportunity and the skills that you've been given as being a student athlete, but they're afraid to use them. Don't be afraid to use them. Go be great. Thank you.